Hello. Welcome to the first part of the I'll retire after saving the world. At the beginning of this series, we see that it's nighttime, and there are some people outside a research facility. A hunter breaks the door and enters the facility. Researchers are scared and say, "Chief, the hunter. Damn it. It's Hunter Hong Sukiang." They capture the researchers and a female hunter says, "There are kids in here." They breaks the glass and frees the kids. They say, "Guys, are you all right?" We see that one of the kids is the protagonist, and he has black hair and dark gray eyes. Hunter Hong Sukiang says, "You can all come out now." He picks up the protagonist and says, "Are you hurt anywhere?" Protagonist sees the chief being captured. He thinks, "Look at the cocky chief, begging for his life on the floor." Hunter Hong Sukiang asks the protagonist, "What's your name?" He says, "My name?" He thinks, "What do I have to do in order to make this man mad?" He says, "Number 12. Hunter Hong Sukiang says, "What? Is your name really?" He puts down the protagonist. He kicks the chief researcher in the stomach and says, "You bastard." Protagonist thinks, "Power? An overwhelming power that no one can look down on." Inspector come there and says, "Hunter Hong." Hunter Hong is scared and says, "Oh, the inspector. What brings you here?" Inspector is really angry and says, "What brings me here? You. I knew you'd be doing something like this again. Let him go right now." Hunter Hong throws him on the ground. Inspector says, "I do appreciate your help, but you're making it difficult for us by acting out like this." Protagonist says, "Are you his boss?" Inspector says, "No, but I'm the one who scolds him when he does something bad." He says, "Isn't that what a boss is?" The lab chief always scolds the other lab members. He hates us too. She says, "I'll make sure to scold that bad man." Protagonist says, "But you look weak. You're not a hunter, are you?" She says, "No, I'm not. I'm not strong either. But you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. There are plenty of ways to scold a person other than beating them up like this man right here." Protagonist says, "Then what do I have to do to become like you?" She says, "You need to study hard and pass an exam given by the nation. You need to work hard after passing too to make it up the corporate ladder." He thinks, the overwhelming power of a hunter and a different kind of power that ruled that hunter. This was the moment that decided the path of my life. After that, we see 19 years later, May 31st, 2044, Ability Management Agency, Young District, Seoul, South Korea. We see that the protagonist is now an adult man, and he says, "Dungeon 2 in Yangdongpo and Dungeon 1 in Inwang Mountain reached threat level 2 today. No one is taking him seriously." He thinks, "These bastards don't ever get any better." He says, "Aren't you going to listen? Even if they're B and C rank dungeons, the interior is unstable because of the raised threat level. Wake up, all of you, and listen so that you won't be lost once you get in there. All right, Team 2 will be in charge of the B2 rank Yangdongpo dungeon. Any complaints?" They say, "None." He says, "Team 1, you guys can take the Tian dungeon. Teams 3 and 4 are resting at the moment because they just went to a dungeon recently. Another guild will be taking care of the Inwang Mountain dungeon. We've already prepared the equipment. Please double-check that nothing is missing before the entry at 2 p.m. Team Leader 2. Any questions?" No one is still taking him seriously. He says, "I thought so." Then get lunch and be on standby, Team 2. That's it. There is only one hunter sitting behind. Protagonist says, "What is it?" "Hunter Yujun?" Yujun asks, "What about the dungeon I told you about? The one in Banggi-dong?" "It was only a D6 rank dungeon. You know, we only send people on raids once they reach threat level 2. I just don't have a good feeling about it. If we were to close a dungeon based on just your feelings, we would get slammed by the media. You shouldn't abuse your powers just because you're an S-rank hunter." He says, "Abuse of power is what you're doing, you Nepo baby." Protagonist says, "Have you ever seen a more capable and skilled Nepo baby?" He says, "I would have fired you long ago if you weren't so good at your job. If a hunter attacks a civil servant, it'll be really horrible for you." He says, "I'm serious. I really don't have a good feeling about it." Protagonist leaves the room and says, "Well, too bad, but it's no longer business hours for me. Don't contact me anymore." "Ah, you can't contact me anyway if you're in the dungeon, that's great." He screams and says, "Hey, Wu YG." After 2 days, we saw Busan. Protagonist says, so this is the watch that was on the news? A masterpiece created by the government and SK Mana Research Leave. It's still in its testing phase, so there are only 2 of these in the world. A girl says, you must be a great hunter. They says, I do have a license, but I'm not a hunter. I work in the ability management agency, which helps hunters have an easier time in dungeons. I'm the agency director's direct affiliate. A girl says, you mean that person? Our nation's best hunter, Hong Sukiang. Yes, it's embarrassing to say, but he's my father. They says, he's your father? Well, he's my adoptive father. I was in an accident as a child and lost my parents. The agency director saved me and adopted me. I worked hard in order to repay that debt, and now I'm working for him. Protagonist thinks it's not a complete lie. Please don't think of me as a Nepo baby, though. I worked for this position. Of course, he's famous for being just and fair. He thinks that is a lie. Well, but I'm not a 100% Nepo baby. I just utilized the fact that I have a hunter license to my advantage. The other girl says, then why did you come here? He says, I'm on vacation to celebrate my promotion. I wasn't going to come, but I was kicked out because I never take days off. She says, it's not good OT, always be working. We're on vacation too. Am I getting in your way? Absolutely not. You showed us something really cool. Can we see it again? What was its name? He says, Hunter Exclusive Miniature Multimodal Communication Device. We just call it a mana watch. She says, it's not just a watch, right? How do you use it? It recognizes your mana patterns, so only the owner can use it. Hold on, let me show it to you. Whoa, that's so cool. I saw this dungeon in the news. She says, YG? This dungeon's threat level is suddenly going up. Seoul Bangi Dong Dungeon Rank D. An alarm goes on. They say, a dungeon destruction? What? Where? It's really bad news. Protagonist says, I saw Bangi Dong Dungeon, right? I don't think anything bad will happen since it's a D rank, but there is a high concentration of people in that area. It's not a D rank dungeon at all. Half of Songpa district was destroyed as soon as it came out. Protagonist calls someone and they say, sorry? The agency director is on his way right now with the hunters that were on standby, but this is. Protagonist says, calm down. I'll be on my way. Send a helicopter. All right. Please hurry. Please. He thinks, half of a whole district gone? That's ridiculous. But it should be fine by the time I get there since the agency director's there. I came all the way here for my vacation. Why is my mana watch going off? Pilot says, sir, below us those things. Are those not monsters? Year 2044, 2nd of June. What? All dungeons in the nation. He gets a lot of warning messages. He says, what the hell? Broke down. After that, a news reporter says, continuing with the breaking news. The phenomenon of dungeons breaking down is happening not just in South Korea, but also worldwide. And the status of hunters who went out on raids with Hong Sukiang still hasn't been confirmed. Wu Weiji says, we won't be able to return to Busan anyway. Since there weren't any flying monsters on our way here, let's look around to see if there are any survivors. He says, Section Chief. We'll find the survivors and head to the Ability Management Agency. Wu Weiji is killing monster. He is trying to contact Agency Director Hong Seo Hyung. He says, damn it. Please, open up. System says, Agency Director Hong Seo Hyung, vital signs cannot be tracked. Wu Weiji thinks you're telling me he's really dead? The strongest hunter of South Korea is dead? That can't be. The future I wanted was simple. Offload all the annoying tasks to others and live a comfortable life. To achieve that, I struggled so much and had gotten so close to it. I need someone to support me. That's why I have to find survivors. I have to find someone. He hears someone cough. He screams and says, Ani? She is about to die and can barely able to speak. She says, I told you not to call me Ani. He says, you think that matters right now? Look at your state. Do you know what happened? She says, all I know is that the centipede that came out of the Bangidong dungeon caused this. He bring out a position to put on her wounds. She says, what's that pricey potion going to do? This is centipede poison. You know it won't work. He says, no, I don't, so I'll just pour it until it works. He He poured the potion on her wounds. She says, "You punk. I told you that the dungeon needed to be raided. You dare ignore a hunter's instincts?" He says, as if there's something less trustworthy than a hunter's instincts. She says, "Well, you're not wrong. Hey, I'm done for anyway." He says, "So what?" She gives him a locket with a name on it. She says, "Take this. It's Master's." Name written on the locket is Hong Sukiang. She says, "Never mind. There's no way you don't know." She smiles and says, "I brought it just in case." "Glad I did." He says, "Glad? What's there to be glad about?" She says, "Still, you're his son. You should have it." He says, "I'm not even his real son." She replies, "You're his only son, aren't you? At least give him a proper funeral." He says, "Well, I'm not giving you a funeral, so don't you die on me too." She says, "You punk. Why do you always have to?" He says, "Don't die." She says, "Like I can control that. I'm lucky to have even lived this long. Hey, Wu Weiji, do you remember how you used to follow me around, calling me your big sister?" He asks, "Why are you bringing that up now?" She replies, "You used to be cute, but now that you've grown a bit, you're such a damn brat. Hey, Weiji, if you look there." He says, "Shut up. I'm pretty sure I have more potions." She says, "If you look that way." He says, "I said, shut up." She says, "My sword's right there." He says, "I'll call you Big Sis again. So please, just shut up." She says, "I know you're learning to use the spear because of your master, but still, take it. It's a good sword." She smiles and says, "Make it out alive." She dies. He closes her eyes. He picks up the sword and says, "How am I supposed to survive in a world that's already ruined? I hate this." Ability Management Agency. The centipede is injured. He thinks, "I expected this. Even if being a hunter is a job where not even your corpse will remain, you're telling me so many hunters exhausted their bodies to kill this one centipede? That the strongest hunter really died, leaving nothing behind but a dog tag? What do I do now? Keep looking for survivors? And if I do find one, then what? Are there even any survivors to begin with?" He kills the centipede. Centipede's body disappears. He is really surprised and says, "What the? Where did the centipede's dead body go?" A digital clock appears there. He picks it up and says, "Did this come from the centipede? I've never heard of a monster dropping items before. What's this watch?" Watch says, "Verification. Authorization procedure implementation, deferred. Initiating emergency procedure." He says, "Is this some kind of an item?" Watch says, "Would you like to? Would you like to set the date?" He says, "What is it mumbling about?" It says, "Would you like to set?" Reinitiating. Initiating auto sequence. "Would you like to execute?" He says, "It was asking to set the date just a while ago, but now it's asking to execute something. Would you like to execute?" He says, "Hey, what the hell do you want me to execute?" It starts saying, "Warning, warning." He sees something and thinks, "What is that? A centipede? No, that's not a centipede." Watch says, "Danger detected." He thinks, the centipede from earlier didn't have anywhere near this overwhelming energy. That thing is what turned South Korea into this. It is a really big monster. Watch says, "Probability of survival 0%. He says, "I don't care what it is, if I can live, execute it right now." Watch says, "Identity confirmed. Emergency protocol initiated. Qualification verification protocol initiated. Verification. Failure to execute the savior. Qualification verified. Ineligible. Initiating a forced execution device." He thinks, "Should I try running away? Is that even possible?" Watch says, "Initiating the final sequence. Approved. Qualification verified. Eligible." He thinks, "No. Escaping from this thing is impossible." Watch says, "Possibility. Qualification verified. The world is bound for destruction." He thinks, "Just shut up and get me out of here alive." Watch says, "Final survivor. Confirmed. Moving you to a random time." Someone slaps him in the face and says, "Wake up." They says, "He's up. I'm sorry. You didn't answer no matter how many times we called you, so we treated you for now. But don't move too quickly." She says, "I'm asking because things are really bad right now. You're a hunter, right? You have a sword. So, he sees around and thinks, what is this? Didn't the whole world get destroyed? Where am I? Also, where did they get the Hunter Academy's old uniform? And what's the deal with that ancient computer? He says, 2024? They say, hey, Mr. Hyenwook. Hey, let go. He sees them and thinks, oh, Hyenwook? A random person says, we don't have the time to wait for you to fully come to your senses, mister. You heard that, right? At this rate, he says, hey. He thinks of all the years, why? April 5th, 2024. Myeongdong, Seoul. Black Buffalo herd. Then of the 46 people in this building, only 5 will escape death. He thinks, what's going on? The events before I lost consciousness. The corpses of monsters and people alike fill the highway. Yoo-jun and the agency director. The suspicious item that appeared after the centipede disappeared. Have I really returned to the past? I published a paper about dungeon breaks as an undergrad, so I know it well. Right before the development of the magic measurement device, back when dungeons were managed manually. Since the dungeon was in the middle of Seoul, it was managed well. Yet still, dungeons are unpredictable. One that looked calm yesterday could explode today. The managing guild that didn't want to lose out on an amazing S-rank dungeon and falsely reported it as AB rank got news of the break only after the first round of casualties and were late to take action. The nearby high schoolers who were training to become hunters tried to protect the civilians. But there was no way students who had just awakened would know how to deal with a dungeon break. The only survivors were 2 students and 3 civilians. This incident was a setback for the newly established Hunter Development School, but it also ushered in the creation of numerous hunter-related laws. He thinks, since I have Yoo-jun's sword, if I was by myself, I'm confident I would have escaped this situation. He says, how long has it been since the dungeon break? They says, sorry? He says, aren't you guys Hunter High School students? Haven't you learned anything about dungeon breaks? A student says, we came here today to learn about them. So, then start learning now. When did the dungeon break? A girl says, about 4 hours ago. He says, I don't need about. When dealing with dungeons, you need to use exact numbers. It's been 3 hours and 50 minutes. He says, good. Have you contacted anyone outside? A student says, we lost communication 2 hours ago. The last news we heard was that hunters were gathering to attack the boss. He thinks the agency director was in this attack team. He blamed himself for only attacking the boss without noticing his students were dying. At least that won't be happening this time. They say, not to be rude, but who are you, mister? A girl says, Hyenwook. Hyenwook says, hold on. How are we supposed to trust someone we don't even know? Mister, do you have a hunter's license? If you do, please show me. He says, I lost it. He thinks, I have it in my wallet, but how can I pull out a license that says 2031? Know that I think about it. I don't have any working form of identification. Even if I get out of this situation, I can't even check the dungeon. They are really surprised. Says, you lost it. Then, he says, I just need to prove I'm Hunter, right? He brings out his sword and uses really strong energy. Okay, I'll believe that you're a hunter. Does that mean we can escape? A girl says, I don't know. It's probably better than being alone. Wu Yiji says, wait, isn't he the Daeyeon group's treasured son? Won't they come to save him? Lee Sunjian? Wu Yiji thinks, the youngest child of Daeyeon, one of the world's biggest conglomerates. A girl says, then do you have a plan to survive? They treasured Lee Sunjian so much that after his death, they helped maintain the Hunter High School, established the Ability Management Agency, and promoted the old man to agency director. Wu Yiji thinks, so what would happen if this kid lived? If I have no identity, even if I'm a little suspicious, I can become a hero that nobody can criticize. Wu Yiji says, of course, we're going to the city hall. He thinks, I'll at least weaken Lee Sunjian's runes and create a scenario where I save him from danger. A student says, the city hall? He says, are you out of your mind? Do you know how far the city hall is from here? Wu Yiji says, look here. He thinks, wow, to experience something I've only seen records about. It's truly moving. Even in the survivor's testimony, they said he didn't listen to them just because they were young students. Would you like to die? A middle-aged man says, what? Are you? A hunter? Threatening me? Wu Weiji says, please shut up. To be honest, even saving myself wouldn't be easy, but I can't just leave these kids behind, so I'll lend a hand. Hey students. They say, yes. Wu Weiji says, do you guys want to leave by yourself? I won't stop you. They say, no. We can't leave people behind. Wu Weiji says, are you listening? Because of them, I'm trying my best to save even people like you, old man. If you don't want to, just stay. I won't stop you. Middle-aged man says, no, that's not. They say, I need a map. Does anyone know the Myeongdong area well? An employee says, I can draw it fairly well. She draws the map and says, we're right here. Here's where the dungeon is. Since the boss raid started 2 hours ago, the Minotaur should have been driven to the mountain by now. A Minotaur? That's an S-ranked monster. It's that close? Wu Weiji says, the buffaloes probably followed the boss to Namsan Mountain, so there should only be monsters that were separated from the herd remaining on the road. Who knows what this is? She says, isn't that the outer part of the blockade? They said they would set up a defense line so the monsters couldn't spread elsewhere. Wu Weiji says, yeah, that's right. Since City Hall Station is the headquarters, we just need to get near it and we'll definitely survive. A student says, then don't we just need to sit still? If the boss is defeated, the dungeon break will end. Wu Weiji says, you see, the Minotaur is a dictator. If the Minotaur says to gather, they'll gather. If it orders them to hunt, they'll hunt. It's the same for eating. But if their boss disappears, what do you think these starving monsters will do? They have a good sense of smell, but they're just milling around for now. There are a lot of Minotaurs outside the building. Wu Weiji says, are there any more disagreements with the plan? Great. Then, they say, are there any mages who know how to draw runes? Oh, mages, you messed up there. Wu Weiji says, monsters are sensitive to mana and target you, so make sure to draw them well. They all draw a magic circle over their heads. A student says, their runes really hide your mana? I've never heard of something like that. She draws a magic circle on Wu Weiji's forehead as well. He thinks, if you compare them to the runes from this time period, that's a reasonable reaction. Wu Weiji says, when it's on your forehead, it hides mana that's connected to you. Although, it doesn't hide magic that's been cast. Wu Weiji says, you know how to activate runes, right? You fill your hand with mana and touch the rune. When I leave, activate them immediately. They thinks, but for Lee Sunjian, I'll just make his mana weaker instead. Wu Weiji says, now, I'm going to release my mana and lure the monsters in a loop around the neighborhood. When I pass by again, you start running. I'll send them away and then catch up behind you. A student says, all right. Wu Weiji jumps out of the window and between Minotaurs. He says, it's time. He lands on the ground. He starts to run and says, I should wear a red cape or something to set the mood. Minotaurs are after him. That students come out of the building. They says, that man. Who is he? Is that what you're about right now? They say he knew about the dungeon boss. Isn't he one of the hunters who Kamito raid? That's possible. It was strange. He knew a lot of specific information. Student says, he could have tripped while driving the boss to the mountain. If he fainted while doing that, isn't he kind of weak? It's a Minotaur, dude. They says, well, the only thing we can do right now is trust him. He did manage to herd away all the monsters in front of the building. That's true. The middle-aged man says, you all. They says, yes. Have you finished preparing? Yes, I'll run with all my might. So let's do this. You guys be careful too. We'll have to work hard if we want to survive. Over there. Wu Weiji says, he's coming. Wu Weiji is fighting the Minotaurs. Student says, let's go. They run in between Minotaurs. The Thinks, martial arts hunters, take the lead. Mages, cast a shield on both sides. If there are any stragglers, just block them using shields, and Oh Hyenwook will take care of them. Civilians will follow after. Just run for your life. Healer, swordsman, you two are at the back. Confirm the ones who have fallen and take care of them. They says, now it's us. One Minotaur appears behind a student. Wu Weiji kicks the Minotaur in the face. He thinks, mister? Wu Weiji says, run. Mister. Move, you fool. Run. After that we see that Wu Weiji is on a roof and says, where the hell do those bastards keep coming from? It was a struggle getting out of there. I understand I'm the one who gathered them, but still. Here's how it happened. I leaked my mana on purpose to gather the monsters. Then I slightly erased the rune that hides mana for Lee Sunjian to put her in danger, right before she gets attacked by the monsters who were lured by her mana. I'll make a sacrificial scene and a new hero will be born. In the end, no one died, and it went perfectly. So, all is well. So, what should I do from now on? If I really time traveled, does that mean a 10-year-old Wu Weiji is somewhere in this place, too? Hopefully, it won't be like in that one movie, where changing the past results in erasing himself from history. That suspicious item also said that this is a world guaranteed to be doomed. It must also be related to the Bangidong dungeon too. He realizes and thinks, the Bangidong dungeon. He checks his watch and thinks, what about my mana watch? It still functions as long as I supply it with mana. I was wondering why it had to be this day. System window appears saying, D6 Seoul Songpa District Bangidong Dungeon, occurrence, April 6, 2024. He says, turns out there was a reason for it. Telling me to change the fate of this world. Huh? Some minotaurs are running after hunters. A hunter says, why are these damn cows suddenly spazzing out? Could it be that one called for more? That was the case a while ago, too. Damn annoying for a cow head. Wu Weiji is watching them and thinks they must be the hunters from Namsan. There's no need for me to intervene. The boss was originally defeated by that team. Moreover, there's the agency director. They attack their own subordinates without recognizing them. Agency director says, better for us. Thanks to that, the little ones have scattered. So focus on binding the boss first. Wu Weiji thinks the legendary Korean hunters of modern history have gathered here. This is like a VIP seat. Alright, here we go. Someone uses plant magic. Wu Weiji sees that and thinks, that's the Archmage Kim Kimin's unique magic. It was completely lost after her death. It's an honor to witness it with my own eyes. Come to think of it, how did she die? If I could save the life of such a significant figure, it would be of help, I'm sure. Let's think. The Bangidong dungeon's threat level has not changed for 20 years. 2S rank hunters won't do, considering such a monster was hiding inside the stable dungeon. That's why the future may change if I could spare those originally destined to die, like the model school students. First, I need to close the Bangidong dungeon and find the dungeon where the person who lit Seoul on fire is hiding. Wu Weiji smiles and says, not bad, right? He thinks, while rescuing them, if I also add it to their debt, that'll ensure a comfortable retirement. They says, done. It hit. Eliminating vines. She uses a really powerful plant attack. He sees them fighting and then he thinks, time to head to the city hall. He says, Mr. Hong, cut down its other remaining leg. He says, got it. Mr. Hong grabs the vines and pulls them. A spearman attacks a minotaur. Wu Weiji is really surprised. They see him and say, a person? Is that a citizen? No. He's wielding something. Wu Weiji kills a minotaur in one strike. The other hunters are really surprised to see him. Wu Weiji says, good work, everyone. Looks like you're busy, so don't mind me and continue what you were doing. They are really surprised and says, who's he? Wu Weiji says, me? He says, just a passerby. After that we see Mr. Hong and Wu Weiji are in an interrogation room. A policeman says, are you sure you'd like to interrogate him by yourself? We did confiscate his weapon, but still. This suspicious man has no social security number, awakener number, or fingerprint information. Mr. Hong says, yup, that's fine. I got something to ask from him. Police officer says, all right then, please, be careful. Hunter Hong. Mr. Hong asks, I turned off the camera on our way in here, so we can just talk. Let's start with names, shall we? My name's Hong Sukiao. Wu Weiji thinks, seeing the young agency director, it sure feels like I'm back in the previous timeline. He thinks, will this agency's direction save the little Wu Weiji a year from now? And adopt Wu Weiji 2 years later? Wu Weiji replies, Wu Weiji. Mr. Hong says, all right, Wu Weiji. Do you know what this is? Wu Weiji thinks, that's the drawing that covered the laboratory's wall. Mr. Hong says, as expected. Wu Weiji is really surprised and thinks, oops. Mr. Hong says, don't be so nervous, like I said. let's just talk. We were very worried about you. Wu Weiji says, pardon? Wu Weiji thinks, do you know me? Mr. Hong says if things went according to the plan, we would have met in a better situation. Anyway, you made it out safe, exactly like I heard, from the blue mana, fire, and the sword. Wu Weiji replies, I don't quite understand what you're talking about. I am the teacher that Kim was talking about. Kim? Wu Weiji thinks, is he mistaking me for a whistleblower from the Bongju? Mr. Hong tells Wu Weiji that I was worried, since we lost contact with you after what happened to Kim. Wu Weiji thinks, it seems that the insider who the agency director was supposed to get in touch with also died along with Kim. Mr. Hong says, we had agreed to help with the escape. I want to catch those guys as much as you do. I've already prepared the identity for you on this site. They're too preoccupied with handling the Myeongdong incident to pay attention to a hunter suddenly appearing. I only know your surname is Wu, so I have you a temporary name. Wu Weiji thinks, how fortunate. This will explain why my background is unclear. But to rush into this, I know the agency director won't trust me easily, and there are still some uncertainties. Mr. Hong says, should I call you Wu Weiji then? He replies, yes. Wu Weiji thinks, but I'm also from Bongju and an insider. It's not a lie, so there's no risk of exposure. Mr. Hong says, you will be working under me for a while. Wu Weiji asks, for surveillance? Mr. Hong replies, you can take it that way. I can't afford to let you off so freely. Anyway, I look forward to working with you. I ended up working under the agency director here, too. Actually, he's not the agency director or my foster father. Wu Weiji says, as do I. Hunter Hong Sukiang. After that we see a week later. Mr. Hong asks, how have you been? Has your stay here been okay? Wu Weiji replies, how could I be fine when I've been stuck in a place like this for a week? Mr. Hong says, but I visit you every day. Isn't that great? Wu Weiji gets angry and says, great? Great? I'm being treated like a prisoner. This thing here is basically my handcuffs. Mr. Hong says, you shouldn't be so negative. Try to see something good in it. You managed to escape, and now you're free. You said there was a lot you wanted to do. Wu Weiji replies, you're the one who has a lot you want to do, mister. Mr. Hong says, mister? Just call me uncle or something. Do you remember the 5 kids you saved in Myeongdong? They're my students. He thinks, I don't assume he just found out about them now. Did I pass the test then? Mr. Hong says, I heard you were the one who baited the minotaurs away. We were able to take care of them easily thanks to you. Otherwise, the damage would have been much worse. Wu Weiji thinks, that's how he's framing what happened. Huh? I was wondering where all those cows came from. But well, what matters is that the results were good. The kids are fine too. Thanks. Wu Weiji says, no, it's nothing really. I was thinking about something. He thinks, the results of this man's thinking have never been good. Mr. Hong says, I know the skill level of my students the best. It would have been difficult even if it had been only them, but you saved the civilians as well. Everyone would have been dead if it hadn't been for you. Mr. Hong tells Wu Weiji that my students were all crying for me to find you, and since I felt the need to repay you for what you've done, I decided to give it some thought. Wu Weiji thinks, why is he thinking so damn much? Mr. Hong says, teach them. You'll be too conspicuous if you follow me around the dungeons, but if you work as a teacher, it'll be a pretty good cover. Wu Weiji says, you want me to teach the kids? He thinks, just from looking at the agency director, it is clear how deep the bond between a disciple and master runs. There are several people, including Yu Jun from Hunter High, who consider the agency director their teacher. They would have done great on their own, but they voluntarily came into the management agency to be leashed. If I create a good connection with those guys, they should secure my future after saving the world. But it'd be stupid of me to reveal what I'm really thinking right now. Wu Weiji says, what would I teach the kids when I can't even use mana? If it's just how to fight, you're a better candidate, mister. Mr. Hong says, uncle. Wu Weiji replies, you're a better candidate, uncle. Mr. Hong says, yes, it's easy to teach them how to fight. The problem is magic. Mr. Hong asks, regarding the runes that hide your mana, did you make them yourself? Wu Weiji thinks, this is why I should have just kept quiet. He asks, you want me to teach them about runes? Mr. Hong replies, It doesn't really matter whether it was you who made them or not. You just need to know about more runes like that. I thought I was going to be teaching how to raid dungeons, but I guess it'd be suspicious for an illegal awakened who recently escaped an isolated criminal organization to know a lot about that. Wu Weiji says, first, runes are not magic. Mr. Hong replies, but they might be of great use for the kids. Wu Weiji replies again, I'm not someone suited for teaching. Mr. Hong says, no, you are the perfect teacher. I can see it. Wu Weiji thinks, should I just say I made them and get them patented? Or is that too immoral? No. Even if I don't get them patented, it'll be able to save many lives if I spread the knowledge on them. I can't find and save every hunter personally, so if I tell the public about these runes, Mr. Hong says, you know you're going to do it anyway. Wu Weiji tells them that it's for the sake of the kids. Mr. Hong replies, yeah. Wu Weiji says, I've taken care of the certified copies and the back account. I'll give them to you later. I called it a school, but it's managed with my own money, so you'll be listed as a guild member. Since you're not doing dungeon raids, there's no other incentive. So I just based your monthly salary on the minimum wage. Mr. Hong laughs and says, you'll be getting 90% of that during the 3 months of probationary period. And as for vacations, well, we're a business of less than 5 people. We still take days off on public holidays, though. The kids sometimes call us for training even on those days, but it's up to you whether to go or not. Wu Weiji is really frustrated and says, I've been scammed. After that, we see 2 days later. They both are going somewhere in a van and Mr. Hong says, that sword's really nice. By the way, that sword's really nice, by the way. It recognizes its owner too. It sent lots to the hospital. Is it yours? Wu Weiji says, no, it belongs to someone I know. Did you steal it? Then I would have been burned too. True. Wu Weiji thinks, this sword actually used to hate me, but I guess it knows that Yu Jun gave it to me before dying. Mr. Hong says, you're not mad because I didn't return it to you, are you? Wu Weiji says, even if you gave it back to me, I wouldn't be able to use it because of the mana restriction device. He says, so you are mad. No, you are. I said I'm not. Mr. Hong says, our school doesn't allow blades anyway, so I can't use it either. It's not like your lessons will require weapons anyway. Wu Weiji replies that, you can just say that you don't want a suspicious man with a weapon around your students. Mr. Hong asks, goodness, why are you so pessimistic? Wu Weiji thinks, he didn't deny it. He says, are we going the right way? The surrounding area of the school was as urban as you can get. It wasn't this. Rural. Is he taking me somewhere strange? Mr. Hong smiles and says, it's because the area here is restricted from development because of the dungeon nearby. Well, it's perfect for raising hunters. They get somewhere and Mr. Hong says, I'm here. Wu Weiji says, is this really a school? Mr. Hong says, it's a bit shoddy, huh? He thinks, it's not shoddy. There's basically nothing here. Mr. Hong says, we're going to construct the buildings next year. This is just temporary. Wu Weiji is really surprised and asks, I'll have to reach them here. Until next year? Mr. Hong says, the way up has to start somewhere. Welcome to Hunter High School, Mr. Wu. Attention, everyone. Mr. Hong introduces Wu Weiji to the students and says, this is Mr. Wu Weiji. He will be teaching about runes. I know some of you have seen him before, but don't be too mean to him. All right? A student says, teacher. He says, yes, Heinwook? Heinwook says, didn't that Mr. use a sword instead of magic? Mr. Hong says, you don't have to be a mage to use runes. It was hard to get him to agree to be a teacher. Heinwook asks, are we going to learn the mana hiding runes? Or the new ones? Mr. Hong says, the new ones. He should be of great help to you too, so don't fall asleep during his lessons. Heinwook says, sounds amazing, but is it okay for him to teach us that stuff? Mr. Hong asks, would he be here teaching you if it wasn't okay? Why? Don't you want to learn about runes? I do. It's awesome. Another student says, teacher, can only mages participate in that lesson then? Mr. Hong says, no, but these two are the only ones who can draw runes. Our school's flexible though, so you can join his lessons if you want. A student says, teacher, where you are not hurt from that incident. Yeah, why did you just leave like that? I was really worried. Yeah, We all worried about you. We asked the teacher to look into it, but he didn't even tell us anything. My aunt said she doesn't know anything either. We thought something bad happened to you. Are you sure you're all right? Wu Weiji is really happy and thinks, these kind of innocent little ducklings. They're so different from the hunters they will be in 20 years. If you die, it's your fault, and what you leave behind is mine. But if you live, it's thanks to me, so what you earn is mine. That was the attitude the whole world had. I think the person who was stabbed in the back by a party member in the dungeon and ended up dying is one of these guys. What's wrong with Park Seo-hyun? Wasn't she normal the last time I saw her? It's only been 10 days since the Myeongdong incident. How did she become the witch Park Seo-hyun? That I know. April 5th, 2024 Myeongdong Dungeon. Student says, Seo-hyun, take a look at this rune I drew. I don't think the line here should be this long. You're right. This is so hard. But you made it seem so easy. My grandfather taught me when I was young. Then just draw Hyeonwook, I'll draw Sunjians. But aren't you tired? I can do it. Black-haired girl says, don't worry. I have more experience being a maid than you. You shouldn't push yourself. We need your shield later on. My grandfather used to say, Park Seo-hyun, arrogance ruins everything. The rune on Sunjian didn't work? Park Seo-hyun, remember? Arrogance ruins everything. The first part of the I'll retire after saving the world ends here. If you want to see more, please subscribe and like. And if you want to support me financially, you can join my channel membership or Patreon only for $1. Patreon and Discord links are in the description if you want to support me. And a special thanks to all my Patreons for supporting me. Thanks for watching.